really interested in my music at all, so I kind of build up all this pent up excitement for my music, and I never get to talk about it. So I'm really glad you're here. I finally get to talk about it for once, and I just started a CD collection, and I'm in school, so I don't have that much money, so it's not very big. So I won't keep you here too long. Don't worry. But I was hoping I can go through some of my CDs and just talk about them, just rant a little bit. So, getting into it, I'm just gonna go into the order that I had here. It's like somewhat organized, but I also live, I don't live around many, like, record shops, so my selection is very limited in terms of what I usually find if I do go looking. But starting off, Dua Lipa, Future Nostalgia. Honestly, it's kind of, my camera's awful, but I love this album cover so much. It's so cool. Look inside. Same thing, just went out a little more. This one is really interesting because the CD is actually in like the side here, and I believe there's all the lyrics in this side. I have a few that are like this, but the texture is super nice. Honestly, I'm really surprised I like this album so much enough to get it, because usually I only get like my favorite albums because I can't afford all of the ones that I like a little bit. But I kind of revisited this one because I really like the 80s style of it, and honestly I liked it a lot more than I thought it would. Like initially it was kind of like radio pop, and I worked at fast food when this album came out. So in terms of the radio, this is like half of what we heard for a while. So I thought I'd be a little annoyed with it, but it was kind of refreshing hearing a lot of the ones that I hadn't heard on the radio over and over again. And honestly, the ones that were on the radio were really good anyway. So it was hard to get hold of them. But yeah, honestly, like the 80s style really just gets me on this one. That's kind of it. She's not like my favorite, but I think she has potential of getting up there for my favorite artist. Coming up, we'll have a few of my favorite artists that I actually found CDs for, but a lot of them are smaller, and I'm in Canada, so unless they're Canadian artists, the small ones are not going to make it into our stores. But this was one of the bigger ones that I got, bigger pop stars. Moving on, I'm gonna try not to make too much noise putting these things away. I think I have all the albums that have this kind of soft cover first, so we'll get some softer sounds at the start. This is not upside down. His house is just upside down. Harry's house. I went looking for Fine Line for so long, and then Harry's house came out, and I was like, oh, well, they'll for sure restock on Fine Line if Harry's house comes out. But they didn't. They only had Harry's house. They didn't even have his debut album. But like the Dua Lipa one, this one has some photos inside, some pretty nice photos, and then the CD and the lyrics are kind of like stuck in the middle. It's a cool design. It's fun, but it kind of sucks taking the CD out without like damaging it. I don't know if there's like a specific way you're supposed to do it, but like trying to slip your hand like in here is really awkward. But like it's a small design, it's light, so I guess that's fun, and it has like full art. Like the whole thing is covered, whereas like the other ones are kind of like plastic with little pieces of paper, and then you'll get to see those later. But honestly, I was surprised I liked this album as much as I did, because I got into Fine Line, like I got into Harry Styles just as he announced this album, and it's kind of more of like a low-key album than Fine Line was. Like Fine Line, there was a lot of belting, there was a lot of like fun instrumentals, like high points. This one, it was more level, like it was kind of chill, it was, you know, a vibe, but like, you gotta be in a certain mood for Harry's house. You know, it's chill, it's fun, but it's not like anything crazy, you know? Like if you're in an upbeat mood, you're probably not gonna want to play this one. But it definitely comes in handy when I'm just trying to like hang out. Definitely trying to look his debut album is also like, it's on the rocks for whether I want to buy it. If I had a lot of money, then I'd buy it, but it's also, I haven't seen it in stores anywhere, which is surprising because I thought Harry Styles was like really big, but maybe just not where I live so much. But someone that the Canadian viewers might know, okay, you might not know him by Josh Ramsey, but he's the lead singer of Marianas Trench, my favorite band. Finally, this is like one of the only things I have from his, because there was never anything in stores. Considering he is like a really big Canadian band, there is like very rare chance. I've actually been looking for, it's a discography like set with Marianas Trench, all of their albums. I have one of their albums in CD, but I've been trying to get the discography, which is all 5 of their albums on CD, but it's sold out, and it's been sold out for a long time. So I've just been kind of waiting for that. I've been hesitant to buy the ones in store, but I've only ever seen 2 of their albums in store, and I've bought one of them. But this one was this year, actually. I got it brand new. He did a solo album where essentially he wanted to do something different than Marianas Trench. So he did like all the corners of pop. So there's like a disco song, there's like a regular pop song, there's like a pop rock song, like a pop country song, and he kind of experimented with a lot of the stuff that he never really could or never wanted to with Marianas Trench. So there's a lot of interesting songs and instrumentation on this, and also a cool thing, I don't know if I can show it. You can see the playlist on the back, but I don't think it shows all the features. I'm not sure if you can see them because my camera sucks, but he got a bunch of Canadian artists who I loved in my childhood, and did collabs with them for this, and he toured with them as well, so that was really cool. Seeing like Fifi Dobson, Serena Ryder, in the songs. Ryland James never actually is in any of these songs, but he toured with him. So seeing all of those Canadian artists that I loved as a kid finally kind of come back in the spotlight with this album was really nice. I kind of played it a lot, so I got a little sick of it, but I still love this album, and I think it'll be one of those things where I need to take a little break from it, and then I'll come back. It's really funny. Dude, Josh Ramsey is such a funny guy. The promotional art for this album was really funny. It was just really fun, and honestly, it's gonna be hard to see on the back here, especially because of the glare, but my favorite ones from this album were Blame It on the Boogie, or not Blame It on the Boogie, Blame It on the Beat, which is kind of based on like the disco Blame It on the Boogie from Jackson 5. He definitely takes a lot of inspiration from Michael Jackson. Try Me is really good. Lady Mine with Nickelback. I know Nickelback. The Horrors are all like really, really good ones on this album, but I think it's a pretty consistent album overall. Now onto my one and only Marianas Trench album. This one is Astoria. You can't really see it very well. All the art on it is actually based on Goonies, which is pretty fun. There was actually a poster that looks like this but bigger, folded up inside. I have it on my wall right now. This isn't my favorite album by them, honestly. It's probably not top 3 for them out of the 5. Maybe top 3. But it's their most popular, and it was the one I could find in stores, so I kind of just got it. This one's probably their best written album. The lyrics in this one, really sad. Josh Ramsey was kind of going through a really bad time in his life for this one, and a lot of the songs hit really hard, like the slow songs, Dearly Departed, One Love, like they hit really hard. Forget Me Not. They're really sad on this album just because it's kind of a long story, but a lot of his addictions had come back because of a depression that came back after their Ever After album, which which was probably one of their most successful albums, at least commercially. And also he wrote Call Me Maybe, and trying to ride off the success of that song, which was more successful than any of Marianas Trench's songs, was really hard. So this album kind of breaks your heart. It's got some fun songs kind of merged in there. But like, yeah, you see some of the more Goonies inspired stuff in here. There was a poster in the side as well. It's another one of the soft covered ones. Yeah, this, like, in terms of the actual music, it's not my favorite, but it's definitely fun to go back to. And if you actually listen to the lyrics in this one, it's really rewarding, really sad, sometimes exciting. It's a little bit of an emotional roller coaster. But I don't have the other albums, but I kind of want to talk about them because they're like my favorite. My top 2 artists, I can't find any of the CDs because, well, Marianas Trench, I just can't find them in stores. And then my second favorite, Happy Fits, are small and they're in the US. So in Canada, there's like 1, in stores I can never find them, and 2, online, the shipping fees almost triple the price of getting an album from their shop. My favorite album of all time is Concentrate by Happy Fits, and I wanted to get that album so bad. It was only $10 USD on their website, but I went to go order it, and because I'm in Canada, there was really stupid shipping fees from the US to Canada, and essentially it ended up costing about like $70 for a $10 album. So that was heartbreaking, and I don't think that's ever going to change unless I go to the US and manage to find, or I go, like, if they go on tour near here and I find them. But I don't think I'm going to find their stuff. But back to Marianas Trench. My favorite album is Masterpiece Theater. It was 2010 album, I believe. And they had a lot of hits on that one, from like radio hits from when I was a kid, and they were my favorite. And I went back and I listened to it, and all the other songs are so good too. The lyrics aren't as good. There's some of them that are like also pretty sad. They hit you pretty hard. And like some interesting topics in there. But overall, it's mostly just like the melodies, the feelings of the song, how they make you feel. It's more of like a pop rock, whereas this one is definitely more of like an 80s homage to pop kind of thing. This was their first album where they mostly went pop. But it was more of like a pop rock, really exciting, really fun. Their third album, Ever After, probably the most commercially successful. If you're Canadian and you remember the 2010s, then you definitely heard a couple of their songs like Stutter, Who Do You Love, Desperate Measures, Fallout, Haven't Had Enough. They had some really big ones. Who Do You Love is on this one, but all the other ones were on Ever After. All their biggest songs. And something I love about that album is that essentially the way they composed it was that all the songs mesh into each other. So listening to the album is a lot better than listening to the songs individually. It's like one big cohesive song put into an album, and they did some really cool experimentation with like gang vocals and instrumentals. They've got one of the songs, the last song in the album, the like final song, the finisher, called No Place Like Home, is kind of like a Bohemian Rhapsody of a song, where they took a bunch of the sections from different songs in the album and put them into one song, and it was like an epic to end the album. And they kind of have a history of doing that ever since Masterpiece Theater. That one ended with Masterpiece Theater 3, and then Ever After ended with No Place Like Home, and then this one ended with End of an Era, and then their latest album, Phantoms, ended with The Killing Kind, which were all like really, really epic, like grand finales for the albums, and they're all really good. End of an Era, the one on this one, is probably like the worst one out of those, but all the other ones are really good. And then their first album is more of like a punk rock album. It's not doesn't stand out very much, but it's still really good in my opinion. But I think I've rambled on a little bit too gosh, out about CDs that I don't even have yet. So move on. We're getting to the hard cases, so I'm gonna be careful not to hurt your ears. This one, it doesn't actually have the CD. You can actually, wait, I'm gonna put it right there. You might be able to see it. Is my CD player, and this CD, it's just like a red rose. It looks exactly like this, but it's red. This is Conan Gray's Super Ache. It is his new 2022 album. I was looking for Kid Crow, but I really like Super Ache too, so honestly I'll settle for this, because the glare on this is going to be crazy, so you're probably not going to be able to see it. But he's kind of sitting in like a bed of roses with all the names of like the songs scattered around. There's not much else in this album. There was like a poster that I have somewhere. I think it's like right here. Just like it was a poster folded up, and that's why there's no front to it either. It's because I took it out. But this album, honestly, the writing in this album is amazing. Like Conan Gray really knows how to write like a heartbreaking love song, and they're like not conventional as well. Like they're not just like boring, same old topics that you usually hear. Like there's very interesting things that he goes over about how he feels about the situations he's talking about. They feel really personal. This one focuses, I think, it focuses a lot more on the story and like the writing, whereas Kid Crow was more, it still had good writing, but it was more so like an upbeat, fun album. It still had some like slow ones like Heather. Obviously that was a really popular one, but that one had a lot more like things that you'd expect to hear on the radio, whereas this one, I don't think many of the songs would be played that much on the radio. But like Memories and Family Line were popular. Maybe you'd hear them, but they're also like pretty slow, so I doubt they get played that much. But like Family Line, that is traumatizing. That song is traumatizing. It's so sad. Memories is really good too. Like Yours, People Watching. There's a lot. Like this is a very consistent album. There's like a couple like Best Friend and Summer Child are like probably the low points of the album, but they're not bad. They're just like not my thing, I think. Like Best Friend's more of like an R&B song, which I mean he did fine with, but it's just not really my thing. But I think that's all I have to say for this album. We'll move on. This one, oh my god, I'm gonna make so much noise. They're like stuck together. Okay, I've got Maroon 5, but it's their first album, so don't panic. I didn't get one of their new cheap pop, like radio pop albums. I think they get a little bit of a bad rap for their new music, but I still don't like it. I think it is enjoyable if you like that kind of like radio pop. It is really surface level though, and kind of cheap, but sometimes it works. But this one's more of like alternative pop. I'm not really good with genres, to be honest, but this is more of like an alternative or indie pop. This is their first album. It is older than me. It's 2002, but okay, I'm born in 2002, but later than this album, so that's a pretty old album. But this one probably has a lot of the hits that you think of when you think of Maroon 5. Okay, they do have them listed on the back, but yeah, like Harder to Breathe, This Love, She Will Be Loved, what's another one? Sunday Morning. Those were all really big hits. The Sun is really also good. I don't know if that one was a super big hit, but I remember hearing so many songs from this album and their second album when I was a kid on the radio. Like these played for so long, and I really wish they would go back to their roots and make an album. It's called Songs About Jane, by the way. It's right here. You can't actually see it because the glare. I can tilt it up like this a little bit, but it's a really cool art as well. Really interesting art. But yeah, this is a really consistent album. It's just fun. Like you throw it on, you're doing something, you're doing homework, playing a video game, just throw it on the CD player. And this one, it'll make you feel happy, even though some of the things he's talking about are really sad. It's just like kind of a chill album. There's not much to say about it. Like good melodies, interesting instrumentals, which is something that you can't really say about so they kind of had to go out there and find what they liked. And initially it was something like this. It was amazing. I want it back. Other than that, I'd probably only get their second album if I could find it. Other than that, I don't think I would get any other albums. Moving on, I've got a little bit of a streak here. I've got 3 Paramore albums. First one is After Laughter, the most recent 2017. The most recent was 2017 album. This one, I don't know if I think it's still my favorite album of theirs. It was my favorite initially. I love the tone of this album where they really tried some like 80s indie pop, like instruments, and tried out some new things from their like old like punk rock like phases. And something that's really interesting is a lot of the songs on this are really upbeat, or they sound upbeat and happy, but the messages are actually really sad. You'll see this in Hard Times, which was like the big breakout hit from this album, but there are other songs. Fake Happy was also a pretty big hit from this one, but you'll see throughout the album that they get like really upbeat and like poppy, and you're like, oh, this is like the 80s all over again. It's so fun. And then you listen to the lyrics and you're like, not so fun. But yeah, like this was my, like how I got into Paramore. It's just such a fun album. Like the instrumentals are so cool. There's like if you listen, every time you listen to this album, there are new instruments that you hear in the background, new layers to unfold. It's so good. There's so much to love about this album. Let me see if I can open it without breaking your eardrums. Oh, I might have to edit that out. But the inside, they've got this little camera. It's called like the Impossible Fork, I think. I can't remember what this is called, but this little shape here. And then I think this is a list of the songs as well. This is cool, like textured paper in here. I also love the advertising they did for this album. Like the bright pink and like yellow and blue colors, contrasting their old albums that were like black and beige and like white. But this was just like a really fun album. I can't wait. I think they're working on a new album. They haven't announced anything, but I think they came back together to work on an album. And I'm really hoping for the best, because Paramore has a tendency of only making albums when they feel like they have something new to bring, which means they're very consistent in terms of what they deliver. It's always something new. It's always something interesting. So I'm really hoping to see something cool, something new out of them. Hopefully by like next year, but no pressure. I don't want to put pressure on anyone. I'd rather it be good and turn out like Paramore wants it. But next I have the album Before After Laughter 2013, self-titled Paramore. I think it actually says Paramore up here, but you can't see it because it's like also black for some reason. But you got the iconic right here, the orange hair from Hayley Williams. Such a cool album cover. It's so simplistic. I'm not sure if there's anything on the back. Oh, that's the song list right there. This one is, I think, their most popular. It's got their biggest hits, like Still Into You, Ain't It Fun. And I think this one is very, like, compared to After Laughter, which is really consistent in my opinion. This one's not as consistent. It has, like, it's really good songs, it's really bad songs. Like, I find Proof really good, Still Into You really good, Fast in My Car, pretty good. See if I can, interlude. The interludes in this are actually amazing. Like, usually the interludes are like, okay, I'm gonna skip because it's just like a boring instrumental. But the interludes in this album are amazing. Interlude Moving On and Interlude Holiday are really good. Interlude Moving On is honestly one of my favorite songs. Last Hope is amazing. Ankle Biters is amazing. The end of the album is definitely like weaker. Like the last 5 songs are like definitely weaker than the rest of the album. And like there are some like not as good ones, like Now, and like Daydreaming, just like they don't hold up compared to the rest of the album. this was one of the first albums, or the first album where they experimented with more out there concepts in like pop and stuff like that. Whereas before they were very much punk rock. Their first 3 albums were mostly all like punk rock, and then this came out and it was like them trying something new. So I appreciate them trying something new because it led to one of my favorite albums, After Laughter. So, and maybe whatever is coming next, it led to that. So this is a really cool era for Paramore. Not my favorite, but I still really like it. And now my third Paramore album is Riot. This one was probably my favorite for a little while. It surpassed After Laughter. This one is their second album. Their first album, All We Know Is Falling. It's good. Like, it's good for, like, considering she was like 16 or 17 and it was her first album. But it doesn't really stand out in any way. Like, it's just another punk rock album. But then they came out with this. This one has Misery Business, which you probably heard of, or you'd recognize it if you hear it. That was the big breakout hit. But they have some pretty amazing songs on this. Like, for being punk rock, this was like the first album I really got into punk. This is really what got me into punk rock. And I was really surprised because I liked Misery Business. I heard it on the radio when I was a kid. But the other ones, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like it because it might be a little bit too hard for me, too like loud, too strong. But it like turned out it kind of changed my mind. Because initially when I was a kid, I really liked like pop, like radio pop. I didn't really care for much else, but I didn't really listen to much else. So this was kind of my foray, I think, into punk rock, and it really delivered. Like, I don't know if there's any misses with this. They're all in the back. Yeah, I mean, Hallelujah is like kind of a low point, but Fences, one of my favorite songs. Let the Flames Begin. For a pessimist, I'm pretty optimistic. There's some pretty great songs in this one. You can see them on the back. They're listed up here in all the mess. And then there's them down here. If I go inside, see, iconic, the orange Riot. It's pretty simple, but the orange for Paramore is very iconic. Especially with I don't know if it's, okay, it's black and white in the front, but she had orange hair for this album, and that was kind of what started the trend for her orange hair, and it just kind of became her look. But yeah, like, there's so many good hits on this song. Like, it's so consistent. I don't think there's any skips on this album. Moving on, I think, yeah, so these are kind of like the older ones that I have, the older music that I found. This one is Best Hits by Billy Joel. I couldn't find any of his albums. In terms of like before 2000s, he is by far my favorite artist. But the thing with him is, I find, because he has such a big discography, is I really like 3 songs from each album, but I don't really like the albums all together. So I find that, like, when I'm trying to find an album or a CD that I want, the only one that I really found that I would like the entire album was Glass Houses, which didn't have my favorite songs. So I found this when I went to Sunrise Records. It was his best hits. Apparently I got it just like the day it came in. It's definitely too small for you guys to read. It doesn't have all my favorite Billy Joel songs, but it has 19 songs and has a lot of my favorites on here. So I figured that this would be a good pick because I like the hits more than I like any individual album from him. So I'm really glad I found this. Now, this is the last one that I've bought by myself. There's another one that I found. That was my parents'. This one's the Rocket Man soundtrack. This one I kind of regret. It was cheap. It was like $8. So I don't regret that much because it was cheap. But initially, I really wanted to get the Bohemian Rhapsody soundtrack because I watched Bohemian Rhapsody and it had basically all the songs I like from Queen in the movie. So getting soundtrack would just be a collection of my favorite songs on a CD. And I figured it would be the same for Rocket Man, but I've never seen the movie. So I was like, okay, well, I saw it, it was cheap, and I looked at the back, and it had a bunch of like the songs that I really liked from him, my favorite songs. And I was like, okay, well, it can't hurt to just get like a collection of my favorite Elton John songs. And it turns out that most of them are not sung by Elton John, and the ones that are sung by Elton John aren't like the actual versions that were released, like the studio versions. They were like the movie versions. So they're like kind of scuffed, and they have weird breaks in them because I'm guessing they sung a section and then there was a bit of story and then they continued singing later. So there's like awkward cuts in between, and half of them are sung by like the kid version of him, which like he performed really well, but it's not what I expected, and I probably should have read a little bit more into it. But I mean, it's still fine. I just don't know if I'll play it all that much. And the final one, this one I didn't buy, but I found my parents. It is Bon Jovi. I don't even know what album it is. I don't think it says. Yeah, it doesn't say. It has a little track list on the back with a black and white photo of them dramatically walking through what looks to be like a warehouse. I don't know. Weird, like 70s. Actually, this is probably 90s, honestly. Bon Jovi is 90s. It's all scratched up because it's old. But yeah, we used to listen to a bunch of CDs in the car, and we had a Nickelback CD and this CD, which were like the actual CDs, but most of the time my dad would pirate music and then burn it onto a CD. And I found the collection of those CDs again. They actually work on my CD player, which is surprising because they're not like actual CDs. They're just MP3s burnt onto CDs. And oh my god, my dad has the worst taste in music. He puts like, imagine the most annoying remixes of pop songs that you hear on the radio, like the most obnoxious, like ear-bursting remixes, like EDM from the 2010s. He takes those and he puts them all into one CD. So I played one, and oh my god, it was miserable. It was like a blast from the past because I remember hearing these so much on like road trips because, well, my family all lives really far away from me. So when we'd drive, he would just put the CDs on and play for hours and hours. So we had so many CDs of just random 2010 songs. And I mean, some of them were like really good, like ones that I forgot, but some of them were like, I wish I forgot this. Like there were a few like 303 songs on there, and I was like I guess it was like nostalgic in a way, but hearing them now, I'm like, oh my god, it's awful. It's so bad. But this was one of like the breath of fresh air. My mom loves like 80s, 90s rock, like classic rock. So like Bon Jovi is one of her favorites. Nickelback is up there. Aerosmith, like probably her favorite. And so hearing those songs when I was a kid was kind of like a breath of fresh air. I didn't really like rock that much, but in terms of the ones my mom liked, I was pretty on board with those ones, especially Aerosmith. But this was kind of a cool one that I found. I don't think I've even ever played the full CD by myself, but it's a pretty long one. But I guess I wish I could have ended it on a bit of a more of like, I love this album, no, but I guess I could talk about some of the albums that I really want. I've kind of talked about some of them, like the Marianas Trench ones, Happy Fits. I talked about Concentrate, but they also have a brand new album called Under the Shade of Green that's really good. They have an album from 2020 called What Could Be Better, which is like probably their worst album, but still really good. And then they have an EP, which was like their first thing in 2016, called Awfully Appealing. And that one was also really good. It's only 4 songs, but if it did come in a CD, and I found it somewhere for cheap without having to pay all the shipping, then I would definitely invest in getting that. I mentioned Harry Styles' Fine Line, and his debut album. In terms of like other ones, Bohemian Rhapsody, soundtrack, really want that one. I can actually, you know what? Give me a second. I've got a notes. You can't see it because it's bright on the screen, but I've got my notes app pulled up, and I have a list of the albums that I have, the CDs, and the list of the ones I want. So yeah, Kid Crow I mentioned from Conan Gray, that's up there too. And then Neon Trees. You probably heard of their songs, Everybody Talks and Animals, but other than those few hits, they're not all that big. So they're never anywhere in shops, and it sucks. I haven't really been able to find any of their stuff online either. They don't really have a shop. And it's also complicated with the fact that they kind of disbanded for a while. It's a long story. But they disbanded after their 2016 album, Pop Psychology. And then they came back in 2020 for another album. But I think, yeah, so I have Pop Psychology is the one I want the most. That one didn't have any. I had Sleeping with a Friend, which was a pretty big hit, but not like huge. And it was like, it's a really consistent album. It's a really fun, like, indie pop or rock pop maybe album. It's kind of 80s-ish as well, like really fun, like synth kind of thing going on. Really consistent, like no skips at all on that album. It doesn't have the highest highs, but it also doesn't have lows. Like, it's very consistent, very good. I also want Habits, which is their first album from 2010. That one has Animals, so you probably know that. Maybe 1983, you know. That one was relatively popular. But that one's also very consistent. It's pretty short, but for being their first album, it is really good. Like, they really found their sound on their first album. I think they had been doing music for a long time. That was just when they got their record label. It was in like 2010 or right before 2010. Evermore by Taylor Swift. I'm not really much of a Swiftie, but I really like Folklore and Evermore. So those two I would definitely get. I love the storytelling, and I don't really like the really poppy stuff from Taylor Swift. Like, it's okay, but I wouldn't buy the album. But for like Folklore and Evermore, and potentially for what she's coming out in October, I think, I might really like it. So I think those ones, and they'd be pretty easy to find. I'd imagine for Taylor Swift, it'd be easy to find, and it's new. 2020, I think, her newest album, so it'd definitely be easy to find. I don't know if I should actually. I don't get any money from this anyway because I'm not popular enough. Holy Fuck by Demi Lovato. That's a brand new album as well. I didn't think I would like Demi Lovato, but I saw the album came out and I was like, I was bored. I might as well check it out. And oh my god, like, I was not expecting that from her. Like, she goes crazy in this album. It's like a hard punk rock album. I was expecting like a pop album, but she went hard on this album. 29 is also traumatizing, but a lot of the songs, like, they're either horny or really sad, and it's like a really weird mix of, like, honestly, it seems like she's doing whatever she wants, which is, I love that for her. What else do we got? Pretty Odd, Panic at the Disco. I had a Panic at the Disco phase, I'll admit that. But now I still like a good amount of their songs, but Pretty Odd is probably the only album I'd actually get. I love Pretty Odd. It is a weird album, especially for them. It was their second album. Their first album was very, like, Fall Out Boy, like punk, like emo punk. That was I Write Sins Not Tragedies, you know that. And then their second album seemed to be them trying to distance themselves from that. So they kind of just did whatever they wanted. They had a song like Vulcan Around, When the Day Met the Night, 9 in the Afternoon. Like, they're very weird genre of songs, like an indie pop, I guess. I say indie pop for everything. I don't really know what the category would be, but it's like, I guess it is kind of folky, some of the songs. You know, 9 in the Afternoon. I'm tired. 9 in the Afternoon from that album. That was like the hit from that album. But honestly, like, even like the interludes and the short songs in this are really good. Like, I think the experimentation really paid off. It just kind of sucks that the next album was like this album was kind of like alternative, but then he kind of went pop after that, and wasn't so great from then on out. Sour by Olivia Rodrigo. Really good writing, really fun album. Just like put it on and just have fun. Maybe get sad a little bit and then have more fun. It's just a really cool album, something I wasn't expecting from her, considering I only really knew her from All I Want. I didn't even know her from Glee. I didn't even know who she was before that. I got 21, 25, and 30 by Adele. I'm debating listening more of 18 so I can get that, because I haven't listened to all the songs in that, but I feel like I would like that album as well. I've Adele and Marianas Trench are probably the two artists that I've loved for like the longest, because when I was a kid I didn't really like music that much, but these two were definitely like the outliers where I knew I liked them from when I was a kid. And I mean, she's so consistent. Like the new album, it's very different from what she was doing before, but it works. My favorite is definitely 21. 21 is like, in my opinion, one of the best albums of all time. Like there's no skips. They're all like top level hits on that album. And then I have their Neon Trees album, their newest one. Probably, it's like at the very bottom of the list. It's like close to getting cut. They tried doing something new with that album. Before they had a lot of like pop rock stuff, and this one is very much like an indie pop, or like just like a pop. And it was kind of, initially I thought it was boring because I only really listened to them for their really upbeat songs. But when I started listening more to their slower songs, I started to appreciate them, and that's when I started to like this album a lot more. It's still not my favorite, but it is consistent. I'll give it that. None of the songs are really bad. It's mostly just different from what they were doing before. So if you can get around liking something different, then you'll like the songs on that album. But I've been recording for a long time, and I just went through all of my albums and all the albums I want. This ended up being a lot longer than I expected. But I think I'm just gonna end it there. Kind of new to this, so I don't really know how to do outros. I don't really know how to do outros, but I might just probably see you guys next week. I'm in school, so I'll be inconsistent for uploads, but if you're watching this, you've either clicked off or you're falling asleep by now, so I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.